I'm back. Rhodes Rants with another video podcast. As you know, these are informal videos. So I don't worry about looking at the camera, although I will acknowledge it from time to time. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I posted a community post today. I have created a Rhodes Rants, quote-unquote, tip jar for the channel. As you guys know, I'm doing a lot more political videos these days, and YouTube is not overly friendly to conservative content. By and large, a conservative video will never be monetized in the first 24 to 48 hours. Occasionally, they monetize it after the fact. The problem is 80% of your views, sometimes 90%, are in the first 24 to 48 hours. So, I would love to keep doing political videos, so I created a tip jar through GoFundMe, and it just supports the channel. So, you know, if you can, when you can, I don't want anybody to put themselves out. Anything would be appreciated towards the channel, and that way I can I want to continue to make political videos, as well as things like Star Wars and horror content. Now, we started a countdown of Star Wars properties the other day. This is all properties that are currently considered canon, that is either live action or animated, which means the Star Wars Rebels, The Mandalorian, and The Clone Wars are all in play for this list. It's a ranking list. And I'll release a podcast for every different property. In last place, the last video, which was the first Star Wars podcast, was The Last Jedi at number 15. Number 14 is Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, or as it is now starting to be known as, The Rise of Palpatine. As Emperor Palpatine came back in this movie, unless he didn't come back, because they have already begun to retcon. I've said before, this is the movie that will not die, because they can continue to release material around the movie, and novelization, books, comics, blah, 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 that are literally retconning a movie that came out December 20th, 2019. Yeah, 7 months ago. Ridiculous. That tells you right there was a serious fracture in storytelling. Okay? That tells you there was no cohesive plan between filmmakers, between content creators, unlike what we see out of Favreau and Filoni for The Mandalorian, which tells you something right there. We had some leaks that came out the other day that I will touch on in this video too, because I think it matters. The Force Awakens was a movie that, in my opinion, set up quite possibly the easiest sequel to have made in Episode 8, and Rian Johnson completely fumbled the ball. And, you know, tried to think outside the box, try to do something different, combine that with the influence of Carrie Hart and Kathleen Kennedy, and it was a dumpster fire backbreaker, WWE backbreaker to Star Wars. And then J.J. Abrams came back to try to make possibly the hardest sequel in the history of movies to have made. Because after The Last Jedi, I don't know that anything outside of the crawl happens, and you flash forward, and you see a Luke Skywalker wake up, and is like, man, that was a bad dream. Outside of that, I don't know how in the world. I made a video last year where I said some of the things that's being talked about now, the world between worlds. They could have possibly saved this movie if they would have introduced that in the first 30 seconds and drug Luke out of The Last Jedi. But again, you got an issue with them having brought back Palpatine as the villain. And the novelization has already tried to retcon that because they're trying to cover their ass, because the outrage from this movie was, well, you brought Palpatine back, which destroys Anakin Skywalker's legacy as the chosen one. And now Disney's doing well, hold on now, he's really a clone. Star Wars fans are never going to buy that kind of lazy-ass storytelling from a book after the fact. That's never going to be a thing. Lucasfilm, if you watch this video, that's never going to be a thing. You will continue to get destroyed by YouTubers everywhere if you believe that is something that can actually happen. You can make 3 movies of failure and then try to retcon it all in some novelization or something. That will never work. The leaks the other day confirmed, once again said Matt Smith was cast as the villain in this movie. I went and looked back over history. I had made 3 videos about Matt Smith. And the last one I did was 6 months ago, where it was leaked that he was supposed to play the son of Mortis, which was a decision between J.J. Abrams and George Lucas. As J.J. went to George and was like, WTF, what do we do? I've got no villain now because Snoke was killed halfway through the previous movie. And George was like, you got to create a villain. And plus, Colin Trevorrow, he had Duel of the Fates out there. They opted not to do that. We found out the other day that in the same leaks that Colin didn't even know what The Last Jedi was going to be about until 6 months, as of 6 months out from the release of the movie, is when he found out about the story from The Last Jedi, and he had to completely shit can his movie. And it's which is unbelievable. Again, no cohesive group, did not follow a 3-film treatment. You had George Lucas, who had a three-film treatment. You had J.J. Abrams that had a 3-film treatment. Kathleen Kennedy gave full power to every director in themselves to be able to create a story, even though it was all supposed to be together. And what does that give you? That gives you a final movie that's a total and complete clusterfuck. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. We begin the movie with Kylo showing up on Exegol. Look, I will say this about this movie compared to The Last Jedi. I thought a lot of the imagery in this movie was beautiful compared to The Last Jedi. I hated the way The Last Jedi even looked. It was shot in some kind of a weird, not Star Wars gray tone through the whole movie. I hated Octu for the most part, and everything to do about it. Octu was a island version of Suicide. It made me want to kill myself. It was just so fucking dingy and dark and gray, and I was like, oh, this sucks for a Star Wars movie. So Exegol looked cool. Kylo walks in. He's walking through. And look, the music in this movie is very good. You hear the Emperor's theme. There's unlike The Last Jedi, at least the musical themes and the scores were placed in the right places at the right times. You know, that helped. But the story was terrible. And I don't know how you could have gotten around that. Duel of the Fates was a better story. That leaked script treatment, that was a better movie. Now, how much of a better movie? I don't know. Coruscant was in that considerably. Palpatine wasn't in it. Okay, so you've added a significant piece of the prequels, and you've taken away my biggest issue with this entire movie, which is bringing Palpatine back. That helps. That does help. But you still have Rey being all-powerful, although in that movie, Force Ghost Luke was at least training Rey. But again, it's the third film. Too little, too late. They tried to do so much in this movie that should have been in the previous movie, and by the time we got to this movie, nobody gave a shit. That's what happens when your hero has got the worst. I call Rey's hero's journey, which she's got none of. It's the worst hero's journey in the history of film. It's awful. And that narrative just continues in this. It just continues in it. And there's sort of parts of this movie where you're like, man, Kylo Ren had a lot of potential in these movies. A lot of potential. You know, and he even showed one little scene where he had like a little bit of his dad's swag where he reached around and he came out with that lightsaber and he does a little shrug like, come get some. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But again, the Knights of Ren gets no backstory. They're in the movie for 2 minutes maybe. They're in the sequel trilogy for 2.5 minutes. Boy, they turned out, I mean, Phasma had a bigger involvement in these films. So they were a shot narrative. Snoke was a shot narrative. He was a clone. And a clone of what? We don't know. Was he a clone of Palpatine? Was he just a clone? Why were they doing all this ghetto cloning as opposed to going to the cloners? That's another narrative I don't quite understand. Why are y'all doing all this side project cloning? Why not go to the cloners? Let them do it. Instead, y'all are sneaking around the galaxy. Y'all are in a dark, dungy room trying to do some cloning. We find out Rey is the granddaughter of Palpatine, which in itself, I would have liked if they would have set that up and still not bring back Palpatine. But her being the granddaughter of Palpatine, in my opinion, she should have turned to the dark side. That would have been something that would have helped this film. Because at least with Rey, she would have chosen the quick and easy path. Everything was quick and easy for Rey. The path to the dark side. Quick, easy, more seductive, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's bad when you get to a finale of a movie and a finale of 9 films and you just don't give a shit anymore. Which is kind of what happened here. I just got to this film and was like, I don't give a shit anymore. I don't give a shit anymore. Luke's dead. Carrie Fisher's dead. I cringed when Han came back in this. A lot of people have said they liked that scene. I fucking hated it because I didn't want to see Harrison back. I was like, I'm good with Harrison being where he was in The Force Awakens. I call that my Han Solo finale movie. I mean, that's it. That's it, you know? Even talking about it right now, I mean, I'm kind of like I was with my Last Jedi review. I'm sort of nauseated. I'm nauseated. I don't care about Ben Solo. Once he flipped, I didn't really care. You know, you could tell as Ben Solo, he had some potential. But Kylo always had potential, but they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with him. He has the mask. He doesn't have the mask. They gave him the mask back. We're like, who gives a shit? You've got 3PO saying, I'm taking one last look at my friends, and I'm looking around like, is it Chewie? You're talking about Chewie, right? Because I know you're not talking about Poe and Finn and Rey. You know, I know you're not talking about them, right? And that was sort of insulting to original trilogy fans. Even saying that line, you've got there was so much movie magic coincidence happening in this. We got on a planet. They just happened to have a festival going on. You just happen upon Lando Calrissian, which, by the way, Billy D. Williams was great in this movie. For the times that he was in it, it was great to see Billy D. Him and Chewie, once again, Chewie and the Falcon are the best thing about these movies for me. And at the end, I mean, I don't know if anybody realizes when all of those ships come out of nowhere and Lando's like, ha ha, we're here, blah, blah, blah. And then Babu Frick is in the cockpit with Zana Bliss or Zora Bliss. We don't care about her. We don't care about her. We don't care that Poe's a spice runner. Don't care. Again, the last film affected the progression and character of all of your new characters. Because there was no progression, you get to the third film, you don't give a rat's ass about any of them. They could have all flown into a Star Destroyer, got out, and somebody could have Death Star blasted the Star Destroyer. And as long as Chewie and Lando wasn't on there and the Falcon wasn't on there, I wouldn't give a shit about any of those new characters getting all blown to fucking hell. Boy, that's a failure of a new trilogy. I wouldn't give a shit about any of the new characters getting blown to hell. It's disgusting. As a Star Wars fan, it's disgusting. Look, I liked all the little shots at Rian Johnson. That Luke Skywalker stuff on Octu in this movie. You know, you got to respect the Jedi's weapon. I did. I liked that. I really did. I said all the blatant FUs to Rian Johnson I loved. And maybe that's because of my hate for Rian Johnson. But again, we're talking about moments of the movie. What is it, a 2 hour and 5 minute movie, a 2 hour and 30 minute movie, and there's 12 minutes of the movie I like? And they go through the desert and they proclaim they can fly now. Well, my God, clone troopers were flying 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Boba Fett was flying. Mandalorians have flown. Why are y'all acting like a bunch of dumb shits in the galaxy all of a sudden? They fly now. Terrible line. Lando and Luke, of course, Luke failed at something else. He couldn't find this Sith artifact that him and Lando was looking for, but Rey found it. But she found it because of reasons. They crashed the skiff. They all land in like a Star Wars version of quicksand. They literally go underneath it, and there's the dagger down there. And I'm like, really? Luke looked for how long? And Lando looked for how long? And Rey just happens upon it. They just coincidentally landed in this pit because movie magic. Terrible. I mean, that's terrible. And all the ships come in at the end, and it looks... I mean, when all those ships show up, and you see them come out of hyperspace, and they're all showing up, I'm literally thinking about all of the portals in Endgame. And I'm like, did they literally plagiarize this straight from Avengers Endgame? A Palpatine won the Skywalker Saga. Let's think about that a moment. Rey's a Palpatine. Technically speaking, you remember he said, strike me down and a Palpatine takes the throne, blah, blah, blah. Well, technically, that's exactly what Rey did. I mean, if Disney ever wanted to make a sequel to this god-awful movie, there's their sequel. Rey's a Sith Empress. There's their sequel. Because she won. A Palpatine won the Skywalker Saga. And don't give me that clusterfuck thrown in at the last second Skywalker shit. That's insulting. That's so insulting to Star Wars fan. Rey Skywalker. That old woman needed your last name? Really? Just terrible. Terrible storytelling. Terrible. And you rat bastards, you affected The Force Awakens. Your last two movies clusterfucked a movie I really liked. You rat fucks. Look, I hope these leaks are right. I hope Favreau takes over. And I hope he shit cans this entire trilogy. I hope he burns it. I hope he takes the negatives of this movie and grabs all the reels and takes them in a back room and they have a pissing contest all over them. I give this movie a 2 out of 10. A 2 out of 10. What I give The Last Jedi? A 0.5 out of 10. I give this a 2 out of 10. I mean, I'll say this: you can see the blatant attempts by J.J. Abrams to rectify some of the stuff that Rian Johnson did, and you can tell J.J. listened to fans. He did. No matter what narrative we want to play out, J.J. listened to what the fans had an issue with and tried to take care of it, other than Luke. But then you can feel the other part of the film where Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger got involved, and Palpatine coming back. And you destroyed Anakin Skywalker. You destroyed Luke in one movie, destroyed Anakin in the next. I mean, God, Lucasfilm. I mean, it was just like, they should have called this Star Wars. Fuck the Skywalkers. I mean, I'm cussing in this one a little bit more, but that's just how I feel. Tell me what you think. Not a super long video podcast on this one. I love telling stories around these podcasts, and I just simply don't have a story to tell around this one. I don't. It was just awful. It was a poor movie. And it was a poor movie because of what was left over from the previous movie. I don't think there was a chance in hell for Episode 9. I really don't. It certainly would have helped if Palpatine hadn't come back, which circumvented Anakin. Maybe if JJ made the most epic movie otherwise, or Trevorrow, if he would have done it, maybe you could have gotten a movie that was a 5 or a 6 out of 10. But don't we need the last movie in the Skywalker trilogy to go out epically? 9 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. Character interaction and dialogue that makes you want to just thank the lords that you're a Star Wars fan. We didn't get that. They don't go that deep in these movies. These are like a shitty Disney kiddie ride of Star Wars films. Peace. I'm out. Till next time. King Kong in a